Welcome back to another video from Thomas Machine Foundry. Today we join Randy, who will be walking us through our no-bake molding process. The no-bake process begins by mixing specialty sand with a two-part resin system. The mixture passes through a multi-paddle mixing head shown at the top left of your screen. Once mixed, the material slowly hardens into a brick-like structure over about 3 to 5 minutes. Today's mold is for one of our proprietary Fraser marine products, a 15 by 24 inch quick-release hatch. Randy starts by turning on the mixer and catching the first bit of sand, which may not be fully mixed yet. He then slides the mixer head over the mold box and evenly spreads the sand by hand. This machine is capable of mixing and delivering up to 400 pounds of sand per minute. Quick reminder, if you're enjoying this video or any of our other manufacturing content, please give us a like, follow, or subscribe. Your support helps us continue creating videos like this and means a lot to the team here at Thomas Machine Foundry. And if you're interested in our proprietary Fraser marine products line, including marine hatches, cleats, and deck hardware, visit us at tmaf.com to learn more. Next, Randy cleans the mixing head and activates the compaction table. This table lifts and vibrates the mold, helping the sand to settle evenly and pack tightly around the pattern. Once compacted, he tops off the mold with additional sand and sets it aside to harden. Here, Randy installs stainless steel threaded pins into the cope, or top half of the mold. He then adds the sprue inserts. These components create the pathways that allow molten aluminum to flow evenly into the mold during pouring. Randy now applies a layer of fresh, white facing sand. This new facing sand helps improve surface finish and helps produce the highest quality casting possible. He carefully hand packs sand into the critical areas to ensure every detail fills properly. Once the facing is complete, reclaim sand is used to fill the remainder of the mold. Reclaim sand is simply used sand that is physically ground back down into individual grains. The darker color comes from repeated heating cycles during the casting process. Randy evenly distributes the sand around the sprues and risers and then creates a recessed area for the thermal riser. The thermal riser acts as a reservoir of molten metal during cooling. As the casting shrinks slightly while solidifying, the riser feeds additional material into the part to prevent shrink defects. Randy again hand packs around the sprues to ensure they remain straight, vertical, and properly positioned. Randy then levels the top of the mold, so our hold down weights will sit level during pouring. After removing excess sand, he blows the mold clean with compressed air. Once complete, the assembly is moved down the line for demolding. Now Randy and Chad prepare to lift the mold from the pattern using our overhead crane. Using careful movements and a rubber mallet, they slowly separate the mold from the pattern. With patience and precision, the mold releases cleanly and is lifted free. After inspection, Chad places a travel board underneath the mold, and Randy carefully lowers it into place. Randy inspects the mold surface for loose material or imperfections before using an acetylene torch to smoke the mold. Smoking applies a thin layer of carbon to the mold surface, helping the aluminum flow more smoothly and further improving the final surface finish of the casting. This also helps prevent defects, such as cold shuts or incomplete fills. Next, they prepare the cope, or top half, for removal. Randy and Chad remove the cope from the pattern using the overhead crane. As before, they gently tap and lift the mold until it releases cleanly. Once removed, Randy inspects the mold and clears out the sprues and riser openings that will guide molten metal into the casting. Chad then smokes the cope surface as well. The two halves of the mold are carefully aligned using guide pins, and the cope is slowly lowered onto the drag, forming a completed mold assembly. After removing the crane hooks, the mold moves on to the next stage of production. Randy and Chad now remove the reusable mold flasks so that they can be used again for the next mold. The cope flask is removed first. followed by the drag flask. Once removed, the pattern and flasks are returned to the molding line to repeat the process. Here, Randy places heavy iron weights on top of the completed no-bake molds. Even though the molds themselves are very heavy, the pressure created during pouring can sometimes cause the molds to lift if they are not properly weighted down. The mold is now ready for pouring. Here, Jeffrey and Randy pour molten aluminum into the mold in unison. The metal flows through the sprue system and evenly throughout the part, eventually rising into the thermal riser. As the mold cools, the riser continues feeding molten metal into the casting below. After cooling, Randy prepares to break the mold apart and remove the finished casting inside. Using a forklift, he tilts the mold onto its side. Randy carefully separates the two halves using a crowbar and sledgehammer. Once open, the finished casting is revealed, a Fraser Marine 15 by 24 inch hatch door. The remaining sand mold is then placed into our vibratory reclaimer. Inside the machine, vibrating grates slowly break the hardened sand back down into reusable material for future molds. Some sections require sledgehammers or jackhammers to help break apart the tougher areas of sand. Despite the aggressive process, the aluminum casting itself is strong enough to withstand these blows without damage. Finally, you can see the vibratory reclaimer processing the remaining sand chunks back into fine grains of sand so they can be reused again in future molds. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking, following, or subscribing. It really helps support our channel. Head over to tmaf.com to explore our foundry and machining capabilities, along with our full line of Fraser Marine products. This is how it's made at Thomas Machine Foundry.